All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Just to be sure, I cover all time zones because we have people, as I can see, people coming from Australia and all around the globe. Welcome to this webinar with a title Defining Your Own MDG and Meta Modeling based on SysML and SYSMOD. Please note the audience will be muted throughout the whole time. For questions, please use the chat window. That's the same window what I used to communicate with you regarding the audio settings. The questions will be answered at the end of the session. We have dedicated 2 hours of time. We will see how we go. We might finish earlier, depending on your questions. And yeah, let's move on. My name is Bob Hruška, and I am a global trainer and consultant at SPX Systems Central Europe. I focus on helping our clients to deliver business value from development processes at an executive level by providing pragmatic solutions to boost the likelihood of successful product delivery. Now, before I dive into SysMOD, let me introduce our company. SPX Systems Australia was founded in 1996 and is the creator and publisher of Enterprise Architect, a globally successful UML modeling platform. In order to provide the best service related to Enterprise Architect in the local language and time zone, SPX Systems Central Europe was established in 2004 to serve the entire German-speaking world and beyond. SPX Systems Central Europe focuses on providing customized assistance for European customers with language-specific technical and sales support. All right. By the way, we wrote a book. This paperback not only serves as the documentation and guide for UML and SysML trainings, but is also excellent for self-study. Delivery within Europe and worldwide. It's available, as you can see, in German as well as in English. In this webinar, you will see how much is UML and SysML alike. You will understand that a great vocabulary without knowing the grammar is for nothing. Get familiar with what a great thing SysMOD is and see how it is implemented into Enterprise Architect, and eventually you will learn the concept of creating domain-specific modeling language and adapting modeling environment in Enterprise Architect. This webinar will start with refreshing facts about SysML. Next, I will start on covering SysMOD and answers to questions like who is the author and what is it good for. After looking into modeling using SysMOD, I will cover the notion of SysMOD implementation in Enterprise Architect by a live demo. I will conclude the webinar with yet another live demo showing the concept of creating UML profile and generating MDG technology in Enterprise Architect. Alright, the OMG Systems Modeling Language is a general-purpose graphical modeling language for specifying, analyzing, designing and verifying complex systems that may include hardware, software, information, personnel, procedures, and facilities. In particular, the language provides graphical representations with a semantic foundation for modeling system requirement, behavior, structure, and parametrics, which is used to integrate with other engineering analysis models. It represents a subset of UML, UML2 to be exact, with extensions needed to satisfy the requirements of the UML for systems engineering request for proposal. SysML leverages the OMG XML metadata interchange to exchange modeling data between tools. The SysML diagram times are as follows. The system structure is represented by block definition diagrams and internal block diagrams. A block definition diagram describes the system hierarchy, system or component classifications. The parametric diagram represents constraints on system property values such as performance, reliability, and mass properties. The internal block diagram describes the internal structure of a system in terms of its parts, ports, and connectors. The package diagram, use case, sequence, and state diagram is identical to UML diagrams. SysML, unlike UML, includes a graphical construct to represent text-based requirements and relate them to other model elements. And for those, that was the comment at the beginning. If you have a great knowledge about vocabulary but you don't know how to use it, it's for nothing. That's the language, the difference between language and methodology. In other words, if you know the words and you don't know how to put the words in order to create a sentence, that's the same thing. So words, that's the modeling language. It defines elements and their relationships, syntax, and so on and so forth. For instance, UML, SysML. But to make it complete, to put it in use, you have to know some steps to follow. And this is described by a methodology, which, as you see on a slide, defines the steps of analyzing and designing the system and so on and so forth. For instance, SysMOD. So now you know what SysMOD is. It's not a language, it's sort of like methodology. Why did I say sort of? Well, stay tuned and I will tell you why. So, SysMOD is the abbreviation for Systems Modeling Toolbox. SysMOD is looked at more like a collection of methods than a strict process. Here is the answer. Therefore, the toolbox of methods. The author is the one and only Tim Walkins, which I believe he is also, I'm just checking the list. If not now, he will definitely join our webinar as well. He is a managing director of the German consulting and training company OSE, and consultant and trainer and active member of the OMG and INCOS. He's written sections of the initial SysML specification and is still active in the ongoing work on SysML. By the way, there is a book on SysMOD. It is a pragmatic approach to model the requirements and the system architecture of a system. It provides a toolbox of tasks with input and output work products, guidelines, and best practices. SysMOD works perfectly together with the OMG systems modeling language. It is not mandatory to do SysMOD with SysML though. However, as a default, I would always recommend that combination is independent of waterfall or agile approach. The SysMOD toolbox consists of three main artifact kinds: product, method, and role. The SysMOD products are crucial artifacts of the system's development, like requirements or the architecture descriptions. The SysMOD methods are best practices how to create a SysMOD product. The SysMOD roles are work descriptions of a person. A role is responsible for SysMOD products and a primary or additional performer of SysMOD methods. The SysMOD model purpose model is a simple description of three levels of modeling objectives. It is not intended to be a maturity model, although the levels represent increasing capabilities of modeling. It has three levels and two add-ons. Only the third level, SysMOD 3, is a real model-based systems engineering with models as the primary source for the systems engineering data. The first two levels, SysMOD 1 and SysMOD 2, I will try to use this thing, are model-supported systems engineering. That is to say that the models support the engineering process, but the primary source of the engineering data are in most cases or other elements outside of the model. This slide shows the two SysMOD processes and SysMOD roles that perform the embedded SysMOD methods. The following products are the outcome of the SysMOD analysis process: base architecture, domain knowledge, requirement stakeholders, system context, system idea, system objectives, system processes, system use cases, and use case activities. The following work products are the outcome of the architecture process: logical architecture, product architecture scenario system states. The methods and the flow on how achieve the SYSMOD products will be discussed more in details in a moment. So let us have a look at an overview of those processes, and there is another thing which is called functional architecture, which is a valuable supplement of SysMOD. Shortly, it's referred to it as a FAS methods for those who might have heard of this. This diagram illustrates how FAS fits to SysMOD. It lies between the analysis and the architecture methods. Architecture process. Input of the FAS methods are the use case activities, and the output is the something called functional architecture. This is an optional input for the architectural work. Let me just, I hear some typing. Let me just mute everyone. Okay. Here we go. It is essential to understand meaning of the architectural types, as only then you will know how to use the appropriate SysMOD methods to create them. SysMOD differentiates between the architecture listed on a diagram. The physical architecture is the general term for logical architecture and product architecture. The base architecture is also a special kind of a physical architecture. Sometimes the term physical architecture is used for the architectural kind that Tim calls the product architecture. You don't have to stick with the definitions. However, it is important that you have a clear definition of the different architecture kinds that you use in your projects, and it does not matter if they are identical with SysMOD definitions or ISO definitions, or create your own. But once you create your own, you have to stick to it. And here you can see the SysMOD analysis process, including the methods and the flow of the products from and to the methods. The SysMOD methods are a collection of tasks that create the SysMOD products. Now, let's have a closer look at each method introduced by the analysis process. By the way, all of these screenshots and the methods are part of the book SysMOD. So first thing, identify stakeholders. These methods plays essential role in a successful story of your project, as you know. The goal is to list all stakeholders involved in a project, as well as their concerns and other information. Over here you see an example, and that's in fact an example of the implementation in Enterprise Architect. I will talk about it later. The next step, describe system idea and system objectives. The system idea and system objectives have to be known to all participating parties to ensure that the right decisions are taken along the way toward the final system. It is not to be taken for granted that system idea and system objectives are well known by the project members. They must be actively communicated. Next thing, describe the base architecture. The base architecture sets the abstraction level of the requirements, the scope for innovation, and the preset architecture and technical decisions. Usually when you start a project, you never start from scratch. There are already some constraints coming from some already existing projects or from some regulations. So make sure that you depict them in a base architecture. Specify the requirements in a system model. So the requirements are the contract between the system engineers and the stakeholders of the system. The stakeholders are the source of the requirements in this case. So we are talking about high-level requirements. Over here you see the requirements implementation in Enterprise Architect. That's the specification view. Next thing you do is identifying the users and other external entities that interact with the system. The system context defines the environment of the system that needs to be considered, defines the system boundary, and depicts the required interfaces of the system. Over here on the left hand side, so you see the BDD, that's the block definition diagram of the system, where you see the system context element, and on the right hand side you see the internal block definition where you see the connectors and possibly, if they are known, the ports already. So this diagram is actually an internal block diagram of this element, FFDS based architecture context. What is the FFDS? I will talk about it later. The next step, the next method, you identify all services provided by the system for the actors and stakeholders of the system. The system use cases are the services and the essential ends of a system. The system is developed and operated to achieve these services. Identify and describe the logical order of execution of the system use cases. So once the system use cases are known, then you just define the logical order of execution of those use cases. As you see over here, you identify by using use case diagram. Here is a special type of use case. That's the part when I will discuss later, that you can extend the core elements to give them more specific name, as in this case is the system process. And the system process has an activity underneath, is owner of the activity, and the activity defines the logical order of the use case scenario, if you will. The next thing, model the behavior of system use cases. The use case activities specify the functional decomposition of the system use case, including the order of execution and the object flow between the system functions. So the specification could be a rough description or very clear and detailed specification of use case function. Well, the level of details depends on the needs of the project. Here on this slide you see the organization, the hierarchical organization in your model. So you see the use case is an owner of this activity. All right. Domain knowledge defines the semantics and structure of the domain objects that are used by the system. Once you have identified the domain objects, you may move on to modeling functional architecture. That's an optional part, it's out of the scope. However, functional architecture is independent of the technical implementation of the system. More stable across product families and generations, and a guidance to derive a sustainable physical architecture. The modeling of a functional architecture is out of the scope of SYSMOD. As I already mentioned, the method and the product functional architecture are parts of the so-called FAS method, what I was referring to it before. Over here you see an example of a hierarchy of the functions. So here you have some functional block, which is the functional architecture of our system FFDS. And over here you see an implementation. This is a relationship matrix. This is a feature of Enterprise Architect where you see very easily that the source is something called functional groups, which are mapped to the use cases. Again, this is out of the scope SysMOD. However, this is already implemented in Enterprise Architect as a part of the SysMOD add-in. Now let's briefly go through the SysMOD architecture process and its methods and products. It's gonna be way faster than the first part, the first process. So the first method of the architectural process is model logical architecture. What is a logical architecture? Logical architecture describes the technical concepts and principles of the system. Thinking top-down in the development process, the logical architecture is the first version of a physical architecture. It covers architectural and technical principles and concepts. For example, an electric motor as a technical concept. A concrete and detailed specification of the electric motor is part of the product architecture. The logical architecture must follow the base architecture. If strongly coupled, the logical architecture is a specialization of the base architecture, meaning that there is the generalization relationship between those two elements. The product architecture is the most concrete specification of the architecture of the system of interest in a system model. The product architecture is a concretization of the logical architecture. So, for instance, of the architectural and technical concepts and principles, and the lowest level of abstraction of architecture description in a system model. So, the next level of detail below the product architecture is part of specific engineering models. For example, a software model, so you would evaluate this, you would just identify that there is some element which belongs to a software, then obviously you would use Enterprise Architect to elaborate on this one, because Enterprise Architect is the best tool to model software-based software related systems. Or you would have some mechanic parts, so then you would obviously use some CAD model which is out of the scope of the system model. So that's just to help you to understand what level of abstraction we are talking about in case of the product architecture. Okay, last but not least, define the state transitions, and state-controlled functions of the system and parts of the system. The states of a system specify the conditions of the whole system or parts of the system that constrain the execution of functions. So here is an example. So you have 4 states: off, operating, testing, maintenance, imported, and here you have the transitions together with the constraints. So what is, I believe, what is critical and mostly overlooked is the make sure that you test an architecture with usage scenarios. The scenarios describe a collaboration of system parts to perform path through the use case activities. A path is one valid order of execution of the functions of a use case activity. Each function is implemented by one or more parts and connections of the architecture. A scenario maps a path through a use case activity to an architecture and tests if all necessary parts, structures, and interfaces are properly defined. So this is a really great way how to double check whether or not you figured out all of those, you identify all of those structural elements of your system. Okay, although SysMOD works perfectly with SysML, SysML is too general to be an effective language for a concrete project. For example, SysML provides the model element block. As you see on a slide, we have a block, but sometimes it can be communication. The communication can be, that can be a segment or subsystem or module. We don't know because that's a block. The same thing with wheel. It's hard to guess what is the specialization of the concrete SysML element. That's why the SysMOD profile is a step of stereotypes that add some SysMOD specific elements to the SysML vocabulary. And I would like to conclude this quick overview of SysMOD by saying that the Liebe company has implemented SysMOD into Enterprise Architect. You can download the SysMOD profile and customize toolbox as an MDG for Enterprise Architect for free from the link provided on the screen. Just by the way, the presentation slides will be provided, so you don't have to very quickly write it down the URL. So you will get it. All right. I will get back to this implementation later. Well, for those who are just wondering, what is the MDG technology? Let me say that, generally speaking, MDG technologies extend enterprise architects' core modeling capabilities to domain-specific languages. For instance, if you want to perform more specialized modeling, you can extend the base UML or SysML modeling elements to their use to develop your own modeling language or solution. A simple method of doing this is to develop and deploy an MDG technology which can contain a number of specialized profiles, a range of other mechanisms to provide the broadest scope for your customized solutions. So as you see here, you can have additional toolboxes as a part of the MDG technology, diagram types, and so on and so forth. Over here you see an example how your domain-specific language can look like, because obviously this has nothing to do with SysML nor UML. So this is just, for instance, you are a guy who would like to model your forest and the animals living in some habitats. All right. The options of deployment of your MDG technology, just for you to understand, the final product is an XML file, and the XML file can be incorporated into your add-in, so it can be wrapped in, and the add-in can be an installer, and that would be automatically distributed to Enterprise Architect, or it can be deployed as a file, the XML file, on workstation, which the workstation can be also a server, obviously, and that can be deployed just locally to a specific folder under EA installation, or to any local file, any folder in your local file system, or it can be deployed to some shared network repository. So if you have some shared network drive, so we can deploy it there, so everyone in the organization is having the same modeling environment available. Or here is the last option that you can actually, in case if you're using SVN, or your company is quite big, you can store the XML file there, and then everyone can access it. Everyone within the WAN infrastructure can access it. All right, now it's time for the live demo. So firstly, what I would like to show you is what you get when you click on a link, how the page looks like. So I'm talking about this one. I just have to disable, yeah. Okay, so I just clicked on it, and here is the place where you just download the zip file, which looks like this. The zip file has, switch to demo. So the zip file has a README file, which is very important to read, because it gives you the constraints for usage. So make sure that you're using Enterprise Architect at least version 14. Why? Because in version 14 the SysML has improved a lot in this version. And why am I talking about SysML? Because this SysMOD implementation is SysMOD add-on is extending the SysML language, which brings me to another constraint. Make sure that you have the extension for SysML 1.5 enabled, which you have to purchase separately, or it depends on the addition of Enterprise Architect. All right, then what to do once you download that? Here is the XML file. That's this is the MDG technology. Then you just simply open Enterprise Architect, And you have to go through the settings, go to manage technologies, and over here you just have to make sure that you would add the path where the XML file is stored. In my case, I already have it enabled, that's why I didn't walk you through that. So it looks like that once it's correctly enabled. Make sure that that is enabled, and yeah, I'm ready to go. How does it look like? Well, let me just create a new project. So I will use this path, SysMOD project. I'm creating a file-based repository on my local machine, and yeah, over here let me create some package and new diagram, which I will use block definition diagram. And over here is the part how the SysMOD toolbox looks like at the moment. So at the moment the toolbox is really nothing but a toolbox with providing the specially developed stereotypes extending SysML, stereotypes coming from SysMOD. So you see in the toolbox all of those stereotypes needed. So for instance, external systems, stereotypes, and their shape. So you see how it looks like. So it's quite neat, those pictures, how they look like. They can be also customized by using shape script editor. Okay, so this is how the implementation of SysMOD in Enterprise Architect looks like. What I have to say, and I haven't mentioned yet, this is available for free. So you can really, as we speak, you can download that, and you can together with the book, you can start right away describing your systems using those two things. Okay, so this is the SysMOD implementation. What else you get together with the as a part of the zip file when you download the SysMOD is an example. An example of the system forest fire detection, which is the same system which is discussed in the SysMOD book. So here you even get the idea about model structure. By the way, the model structure is very well described in the book. So if you really follow the book, you're ready to start. And over here you see this is the starting diagram. So over here I can just quickly show you. You pretty much already saw those examples when we were walking through during the presentation. But here this is a live thing, so you really see how this is everything connected. So when you double click here, you even see the beer mat. This is also how a base architecture can look like. So this is your idea. So for the forest fire detection system, we would use some satellite server sensors and animal sensors, access points, and this is our system. Or if you really want to use the SysMOD Intensity 3, that's the pure model-based system engineering, you would obviously your base architecture would look like this. So this is the situation. So what else I could well, feel free to download it again, and you can walk through the example by yourself. Here is even in the example there are even versions like what a simplified context diagram could look like compared to the pure model-based system engineering approach, including the proxy ports. And as you see, the extension, the SysMOD extension, is heavily using SysML. So if you don't have SysML enabled, then it wouldn't look like that. And obviously EA14 again is needed, because EA14 has the support of the diagram frame implemented in SysML. Okay, so any questions before we open the last point of our presentation? We are quite fast, so we still have an hour and a half ahead. However, I don't feel it's necessary to walk you really through the whole thing, since you can download it on your own and really get the feeling get a feeling going through it in your installation. Okay, no questions so far. So here is the last point, and the last point is the concept how easily you can define such modeling language, how you can define modeling language, and plus how you can extend, if you are a systems engineer, how you can extend a SysML profile very elegantly in the Enterprise Architect, and mainly how you can deploy it and using MDG technology. Okay, for that I will just close this instance of Enterprise Architect and open a new one. All right. Oh, I closed Enterprise Architect. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Again, a reminder, you can use the chat window and ask me questions as I speak, and then at the end of the webinar I will answer to those questions, so you have a great opportunity to ask me. Okay, what I will do, I will create a new file-based project, which will be the definition of my model, specialized model domain specific language. So I would call it new DSL, or actually I can call it my first domain specific language. Okay, so I just created that. In Enterprise Architect, that's the best thing, to create, or I should say extend, the modeling languages such as UML or SysML or whatever modeling language you are using. The great thing is that you don't have to purchase any additional software to do that. You really can use Enterprise Architect as is. The best way how to start with how to start creating your own something called UML profile is this. You can use this model pattern, which the first thing that was introduced in EA14. The first thing, there are process guidance. So here is one thing, adding meta model rules to a UML profile. So this is actually a second step. Once you already have created the profile, then you can apply some rules to it. But just for you to know that something like that exists in Enterprise Architect, I'm just going to show you that how it looks like. What are those model patterns? The model patterns are already predefined things in Enterprise Architect, which based on the perspectives what you are using, meaning what is your interest as a what role you play with Enterprise Architect. Then it adjusts the process guidance or model patterns, which I will talk about later. So how it looks once you import the guidance. So it looks like that. It really walks you through. It's obviously using a UML syntax, and it walks you through the process. That first you have to do create a starting profile. That's something what we are about to do. And then you can restrict relationships, create view specifications, and so on and so forth. What will help you to make sure that you wouldn't forget anything about anything. So that's why there are those checklists. So once you do something, you just can say, okay, I just created that, check. Now I will define complete MDG technology. So create diagram profile. Okay, check, check, check. So it can really walk you through the whole procedure. So that's one thing. Another thing, before you start, I have to mention, before you start creating your own MDG technology, you have to make sure that you have the appropriate MDG technology for defining the modeling languages enabled. In my case, that's the, well, in your case also, it is the MDG technology builder, MDG technology. By the way, by default, you have all MDG technologies enabled, so I don't think that will be issue. So in case if you just want to see, make sure go to the MDG technologies and enable the MDG technology builder. In my case, I'm ready to go, and I will go back to this model pattern, and over here there is there are two model patterns available for this MDG technology builder, MDG technology. And first is called starter template, and the other one is basic template. What I'm going to do, well, I'm going to create a patterns, both of them, and so you can see the difference. What more details, what is the starter technology, what it consists of, you can see in a window. You can read more about that, and there are even links, references to some guidance what to do step by step. So that's very helpful. This is, by the way, available as of EA 14. So this you wouldn't find it in a older versions of Enterprise Architect. So let me first create a starter template pattern. Okay, just it's telling me that I haven't saved that diagram. I'm okay with that. The first thing what it's asking you is the name of the technology. Why? Well, based on that, it will give it a name to those packages what it's about to create. So I will just give it the name first. Oops. First DSL, or I can actually, whatever, it's just a name. My first DSL. Okay, my first DSL, and as you see, the model structure looks as follows. It created a view. A view is a second hierarchical level of the model structure hierarchy. So this is it. My first DSL, and then it created 3 profiles. Before we dig into that, I will create the other one, the other profile. So again, from the MDG technology builder, basic template, create template. Yes, I'm selecting the root node, so it will create right underneath. My first DSL, I can name it the same. It's just to show you what's the difference. The difference is in the first case, here you actually see those diagrams which are walking you through the procedure how to build an MDG technology. So first you have some profile which is defining the UML profile, and then there are even some examples as we will elaborate on them later. Then toolbox, how a toolbox can look like, and diagram types. unlike in the second case, you just don't have any descriptions in there. So the second case is more for advanced users who actually know what they are doing. So you have really just empty structure, having just those diagrams and those packages in packages generated and ready to be used. So because we are learning how to build your own MDG technology, I will use the one providing the annotations to the process. Okay, so let us first have a look at the profile package, which is the very package defining your stereotypes. I will just by double-clicking, you see how it looks like. Now by double-clicking, what happened was it just opened this diagram under the package my first DSL stereotyped as a profile. What you are tasked to do in this case, you just have some meta class, which is coming from the core UML elements. That's the class, which is extended by a stereotype called animal. As you see the description, you can use something which is called model helper. Model helper was introduced, correct me if I'm wrong, in EA 13 or so, which is really a great thing which walks you through the additional settings of the stereotypes. This is really great thing. You can define a behavior and the visual appearance of those elements. Okay. So what you can do if you want to extend SysML, because this is really extending just the UML element. Well, in that case, it's going to help you this meta class element. The meta class element, what you can do, you can you can switch to the stereotypes, and here you see all of those MDG technologies available. So in my case, I will just select SysML 1.4, and in this case, you just select the appropriate element what you would like to extend. So in my case, I'm just going to use the our best known element, which is the block. So SysML block. Once it creates that, so you have a reference to a SysML block which comes from the SysML profile, which is not the core UML. So what you are doing now is actually you are enhancing or extending, well, in fact, you're not extending, but you are creating a specialization of the SysML 1.4 block. What does it mean, the specialization? Well, in this case, what I'm going to do, I mentioned that SysML has only the stereotype block. So let me just very quickly show you how you can introduce a new element, for instance, called subsystem into your domain specific language. So I will just I will change the name of the stereotype to subsystem, and quick linker will help me to find the appropriate connector. So which is the generalization. That's what I was talking about. Specialization. Why is it specialization and not extension? Again, this is a specialization of the already existing SysML element. Unlike in this case, we are talking meta class. This is core UML element. So for our webinar, as I mentioned, I will just walk you through the concept. So let us say that this is conceptually, we just created our subsystem extension to the SysML, and we will use this element. Okay, we're fine with that. What we can also do here is another package, which is called a diagram profile. The diagram profile, actually I will go to the toolbox just to make it more specific. The toolbox profile, what it does, it just gives you exactly this what we used for the SysMOD toolbox. So we defined a specially designed toolbox where you would just say, okay, in this toolbox you would have these kind of elements. So this is what's happening right now. So now we have only one element in there. What I will add, since we have already created this element subsystem, so I will just add to our specially developed toolbox profile our new am I able to copy that? Yeah, copy as new, and what I will do in this case, I will just say subsystem because it already knows subsystem defined in my first DSL, and I will call it subsystem. This initial value, it gives me the value what you would see here, the value of the item of a toolbox what we are creating. Well, we are ready to go. Right now we have our specially defined profile of my first DSL, and we have the toolbox profile. So what is the next step what you need to do? So we went through these steps. We need to create an MDG technology. In order to create an MDG technology, what you need to do before, you need to save these packages as UML profiles. Let me just show you how easily you can do that. In the menu specialize, in the ribbon specialize, go to technologies, publish, and publish package as UML profile. You do that for the profile. For the first time, you just have to find the appropriate path. So that would be my first profile XML. Okay, and save. Second thing, select the other package, publish package as UML profile. I will use the same path, but this time I will use my first DSL toolbox. Okay, now I have the toolbox profile together with the UML profile stored in a location, in my case temp. The next step what you need to do is to go to ribbon specialize and select in a publish option generate MDG technology. Here is a wizard. The first time you have to create something called MTS file. Here you have to locate where the MTS file will be stored, so I will just say this will be again in a temp, and I would say my first DSL and store it as MTS. Here you just give it a name, my first DSL. Now you have to just give a name the product, the actual MDG technology, encapsulate it in the XML file. So this is going to be my first MDG. Okay, ID, just There has to be a unique ID, version. You can put version 1.2. You can optionally assign some icon, logo, and so on and so forth, URL, support, and some description describing your MDG technology. What is the next step? The next step, in order to create your own MDG and deploy your modeling environment, in our case, we will keep selected the profiles, and since we just customized our own toolbox profile, I will select the toolboxes. As you see, these are all the options what MDG technology can encapsulate. So you can even carry some code modules and diagram types and so on and so forth. And plus, you can even incorporate some templates which are used to generate generate a report automatically out of Enterprise Architect. All right. Here, I just have to go to the package. Okay, I have my first profile because it's asking me profile, and here the same thing. I will assign the toolbox. Okay, here is, oops. Okay, my first DSL toolbox, done. And finish. Okay, perfect. My first MDG technology has been successfully created and generated into my first mdg.xml file. Now what we can do, well, I can just launch another, start another instance of Enterprise Architect, and let's see if we did it correctly, and let's put in use our newly created MDG technology. In order to do that, you need to enable your MDG technology. Go to Ribbon Specialize, Manage, and here is the advanced. In my case, I would just add path, and here I would go to the temp. Okay. And let's see. My first DSL, as you see the description over here, the location, it found it, so let's enable that. Once we enable our MDG technology, and we can just create new file. So test of DSL. Okay, here I will just create some package, and over here I would create diagram. Why am I creating a diagram? Whatever kind? Well, because we haven't defined the diagram types, we just defined the toolbox profile. And here in the toolbox profile, we should see, here it is, my first DSL. And here is our toolbox where we see the animal and subsystem element, which the subsystem element is an extension of the, or is a special type of a block element which comes from SysML. So it shares all the functionality defined by systems. So for instance, when I have composition to whole, it automatically creates the part elements which are type of this block 2 in my case. With that, that would be very quickly introduce the concept of creating and deploying your own modeling language. Let me go back to the presentation and just mention that us as Spark Systems Central Europe, we have been involved in a lot of research projects, which some of them have been finished already and most of them are still ongoing. Again, you will have the presentation slides available so you can click and see what those projects are about. Well, if you want to get more, don't hesitate to contact us and ask for services like training, consulting, premium support, or any kind of services around enterprise architect at this generic address, or you can contact me directly. My name is Bob Ruška again, and here are my contacts. I'm just looking at the chat window, no questions asked, so you have a last chance to ask me some questions on this topic. If there aren't any questions, thank you so much for being patient audience, and we can conclude this webinar as finished. We finished a little bit earlier, but we went through all of the things I promised at the beginning. Thanks again, and have a great rest of the day or night or whatever time zone you are in. Thank you. Bye-bye.